What's up, guys? How are you all doing? It's been about 1,000 years since I posted a video, and in my defense, it is the consequence of just a general malaise about Commander format. Nate and I have actually sort of shared this opinion, unfortunately. I've talked about it a little bit, not only in videos on this channel, but also in videos that I've made on other channels, like for Daniel's Vintage Magic channel, about just sort of the general state of Commander and how much power creep has affected it adversely and just made it kind of starting to feel a little bit too much like vintage. The games sort of seem like a lot of them are coming down to, let's just draw our opening 7, compare hands, and determine a winner and move on from there. And that's sort of the way that vintage format feels, and one of the reasons why I really don't like the format very much. And that's specifically about vintage, but Commander has been steadily devolving into that, and that's been compounded by the fact that they keep putting insane amounts of card advantage and card draw into the command zone. So all of the crazy acceleration tools you can now leverage into drawing extra cards and just blowing your opponent out. And Bullsat was sort of a demonstration, encapsulation of that concept. And now it's taken a little step further with the printing of the Planeswalker Minsk and Boo, which if you guys play a lot of Commander, you've probably run into it. I can guarantee you that that Planeswalker is unbelievably stupid and oppressive in competitive Commander, to the point where it should be banned if anybody actually cared about competitive Commander. And I think that Minsk and Boo is kind of just indicative of things to come. It's a longer, deeper philosophical discussion about some sort of deeper problems that I think exist in Magic. And I'll probably make a video about it on the channel, but that is not what we're doing today. Today, we're here to talk about a brand new format, at least relatively brand new in the sense that it was pioneered about 4 or 5 months ago. Good friend of mine actually now, a guy named Chad, who lives down in Texas, and a friend of his named Nick, put their heads together and decided that they wanted to pioneer their own version of old school, because there were a bunch of different pocket play groups around the world, started in obviously with the Swedish rules, branched off into Eternal Central, then Pacific rules, French rules, Atlantic rules. There's a whole bunch of different old school groups, and they're all pretty similar. But one thing that they all have in common that's different from Chad's format, or Chad and Nick's format, is that all of them allow you to play with the core set. So Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Revised. They all include that core set because those sets were in print in 93 and 94. So Chad and Nick thought about, well, what if we make an old school format that doesn't have Alpha in it? What would that look like? And after thinking about that for a while, they came up with the perfect name for it. It is affectionately titled the Four Horsemen. And here they are. These are, in fact, sealed boxes, which I happen to have. Sealed box of Arabian Nights, sealed box of Antiquities, sealed box of Legends, sealed box of the Dark. Collectively, they are the Four Horsemen of the format. And it's been really interesting, actually, kind of following this format. Chad brought me on board when they were having their inaugural event, which was, I think, kind of back in the middle of the summer, maybe July. And initially, I thought that without the alpha card pool, the format would be just too constrained by that and might not be interesting enough to really throw some time to innovating it. Certainly not in the same way that 7-point old school Singleton captivated me, or Canadian Highlander, or X-point old school, or whatever, all of these random fringe formats. But it turns out actually that surprisingly, there's quite a bit of depth to Four Horsemen, more than you'd expect. I do think that the format is still kind of in flux and still needs to be fine-tuned. In fact, the deck that you see in front of you, which I'm about to cover, included a major update to the format that I recommended to try to kind of bolster deck diversity and creativity, and also just to give various strategies tools to deal with some of the more predominant abusive strategies that were endemic to the format. I'll get to that in a second, but the suggestion I made, you'll notice I'm just talking about how it's the Four Horsemen, and then very conspicuously there are 6 dual lands here. And that was my suggestion, that that including the alpha dual land cycle in the format would be a net positive change for it, basically allowing people to splash other colors to deal with some of the more problematic permanent types, and to just give you the opportunity to really play more than monocolor or maybe single color with a splash. Because when you're trying to do that off a mana base that's just Cities of Brass and basic lands, it's extremely hard. A point that I made in my 7-point old school Singleton videos was how many of the good cards from back in the day require double colors as well. And that problem is really compounded when you don't have access to dual lands, and you just wind up with a deck that can't cast its spells half the time, and that's not really fun for anyone. So I suggested adding the alpha dual land cycle to the format, and it seems like it's actually been a net positive. Not that every deck is using dual lands, but I think overall it encourages deck diversity, and it's probably good for the long-term health of the format should it persist. But anyway, I just finished up my semifinal round from the online event. We were playing with webcam, which is kind of how a lot of people play these formats these days, and I thought it would be a good time to actually cover my deck in detail as well as talk about the format. So that's what this video is all about. Let's get started.